An unintentional life accepts everything and does nothing. An intentional life embraces only the things that will add to the mission of significance. I heard a saying recently that says, change is inevitable, growth is optional. I really, at first I did not like that because it requires me to be intentional about growth. It's not just something that happens, like change happens. The change of the years from 2021 to 2022, that is change. It is inevitable, it is happening, but it doesn't automatically bring growth. So if there's one idea I'm taking into this year, it is that growth requires intentionality. Life requires intentionality if you're gonna have a fulfilled and meaningful life. And the metric by which I use to base the quality of this year is going to be how much I have grown and what I have accomplished by the end of it. Recently, I did a podcast with my brother Reagan where we discussed the books that impacted us the most from 2021. And looking over them, I couldn't help but notice that the great men and women who have written these books and have accomplished these incredible feats and that I look up to, I've seen above all else, I see the power of intentional living. They didn't slide their way through life and end up where they did by accident. And I can't help but notice that common denominator of intense focus. And I think we often enjoy seeing this in depictions such as, movies or books, because we see a bit of ourselves in that and what we want ourselves to be like. Where we see a character remove himself from the monotony of life and rise above it and accomplish something incredible. And I find it interesting how, the majority of us have experienced an event of some sort of significance that upends our life enough to yank us out of the mundane of life. For me in the past, it's been, the coming of a new year, maybe an exhilarating event, moving and living in a different part of the country, something like that breaks the routine, that breaks my comfort level. And each time this happens, there's like a breath of fresh air, and I seem to see the world through different lenses. I usually get incredibly energized and I make a list of all the things I want to do and all the things I want to accomplish, and I just kind of ride that high. But then inevitably I slip back into the mundane of routine and plod along, looking at each step in front of me and forgetting to look where I'm going and why. In other words, I lose my intentionality. And if I really want to make 2022 the best year yet for me, I need to be intentional. I can't afford it not to be. I'll never get this year back. It's gone forever once it's in the history books. So I did a little bit of digging into, how the people I look up to and respect, how do they avoid falling into the monotony of life? How do they prevent losing focus? I learned that an intentional day is one where we have a strong sense of priorities and we don't allow ourselves to be swayed by meaningless distractions or low priority outcomes. If we don't intentionally direct our focus, it will be diverted by our fears, our desire for immediate pleasure, or the demands of others. Haven't we all had that experience where, we have no clear focus? So, when that email comes in, we dedicate all of our energy to it without realizing that it's not our highest priority and that it's actually the priority of somebody else, not even ours. Ever catch yourself bored or unenthusiastic or simply going through the motions? That's often because there's no drive and no exciting agenda to fulfill. No intentionality. I also learned that almost universally, I think that there are three things that high achievers use to maintain this level of focus and intentionality. The first one is know exactly where you are going. It's about living forward and not being pushed through life, but stepping ahead of that and trying to stay one step ahead and moving in that direction without being pushed in that direction. Basically, know where you're going. And this one is huge because you can't hit a target you can't see. And it's very hard to be intentional about life when you don't know where you're going. And it's interesting how intentionality is it's like productivity in that. It's not a means to an end. It needs to be linked to a future result or goal. If you're just living, quote, intentionally, it's like, okay, great. What are you how are you living intentionally, or what are you living intentionally about? You have to have your focus on something to be intentional about. A great way of doing this is by defining the goals for that year. And, look ahead, look close ahead at, tomorrow, this week, this month. What are you doing? How are you accomplishing your goals? What are you focusing on? And where are you going to choose to put your focus? But then look farther out too, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What are you going to do today to further you in that direction? Where are you going today and why? A question I like to ask myself is this taking me in the right direction? Whenever I find myself doing any sort of action, is this taking me in the correct direction? And if the answer is no, then it's like, logically, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, it's not taking me closer to where I want to go. If I'm trying to watch a sunset, I'm not gonna run east looking at the sky. That's dumb. I wouldn't purposefully do that. The second thing is grow your mind every day. Your mind is by far the most complicated part of who you are. And without a doubt, it's one of the best uses of our time to stretch and grow it. We're constantly taking things in to our minds, right? And I think another part of this is guarding the gate to your mind. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot that's incorrect or harmful, and we have to be intentional about what we allow in. Your mind is your most powerful resource. You wouldn't be anything without your mind. And so growing that and protecting it is key. Tony Robbins, one of the most successful life coaches in the world, says that every day you must grow your mind for at least 30 minutes. At least 30 minutes of focused time in simply expanding your mind. Developing that mental agility is incredibly important. There's also something to be said about taking care of your mind, right? Like there's sleep and eating properly that will significantly degrade the quality of your mental capacity if not done properly. The third thing I landed on is a willingness to push yourself beyond your normal level of comfort. A really good friend of mine says that good things don't come to you in your comfort zone. And I truly believe that the people that are going to make the most out of 2022 are undoubtedly the ones that are going to be willing to step outside of their comfort zone because they know it's good for them and because they know it will grow them. When we don't push ourselves outside of that comfort zone and we react to the things that are uncomfortable or unsafe, when we do that, we slowly shrink our circle of experiences, and it slowly closes in around us and it almost suffocates us because it's like we're trying to push out everything that we don't like, and therefore it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, the experiences that we actually do allow ourselves to have. And that's incredibly dangerous. We have to be willing to step outside of that on purpose and not wait to be forced outside of it. For myself, I found it incredibly useful to find a activity or something, preferably daily, that is slightly uncomfortable and pushes you farther than you would go just on your own or normally. For me, it's cold showers. They're uncomfortable, and I wouldn't normally ever do that unless I was forced into it. And so it's a daily choice that kind of reminds me and helps me remember that I'm trying to live a lifestyle of this. And something else that can be really useful is to write down in the evening something that you could do the next day that would stretch you or that would benefit you in some way, and actually write down how it would benefit you. Does it push you outside of your comfort zone? Does it stretch you as a person? Does it require you to learn a new skill? Whatever that is, it can be really good to define that and actually put something down that you want to do. Okay, obviously the topic of this video, intentionality, is my interpretation of what would be an ideal or the best year yet. Simply based off of the things that I've seen in my own life and especially in the lives of others, I've concluded that if I can live every day intentionally and focused on where I'm going and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I think that is how I'm gonna find the most enjoyment, the most fulfillment, and grow the most in 2022. It's very interesting as well how willpower is critical when it comes to moving forward in striving for intentionality and focus. And if you struggle finding willpower, that can really hinder you. And if that's the case, I would highly encourage you to check out this video that I made on willpower and how to use it most effectively.